Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
How are we doing, Claire?
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting time to be a head teacher right now. Let's put it that way.
End of term's easy, isn't it? Apparently, end of term's easy.
Oh,
right?
okay. Okay.
That's what I've heard.
Know.
That's what I've heard because I've heard that. I'm not experiencing that.
No, exactly.
So it's busy, right? It is busy.
It is massively busy and massively hot, and everything's about to change. And children and staff find that hard. And we've got, personally in my school, quite a high level of really quite serious staff absence, kind of long term. So you just add that into the mix of getting reports and everything else ready to go. And it's it's been an interesting half term.
Oh, wow. So you're locked and loaded for an OFSTED conversation, right?
Do you know what? Interestingly, I'm all ready for this, though, because
you're all ready for this.
We fall into the OFSTED window not too soon. So and actually, when we were deciding what to talk about, this was really apt because last week a group of 12 head teachers, primary and secondary, met with our local MP to kind of produce a response to the new proposed OFSTED framework. And so I've got some really good statistics from, I mean, it's a small sample, obviously, but a whole range of different secondary, primary, MATs, local authority schools about the impact of OFSTED, what it could look like, what it should look like, and answering, I guess, that question. Should we do things for OFSTED? Should it make any difference if the framework changes?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? And like, this is why I was really looking forward to talking to you about it, because obviously the head teacher is the person who's going to bear the brunt of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, and inevitably they're the one who are going to make those decisions about, well, should we do this for OFSTED? Should we not, etc. And so I was really looking forward to get to your perspective. And you're coming into the window. Our school is in the window at the moment. We haven't been done yet, but it should be really interesting. And it's, there's conversations popping up all around the place and various people with various thoughts. It'd be just really interesting to get perspectives on this. I'd like to ask you this first, though. I can't remember who it was on X, but they I need to go back to my original post. I'll try and find it. But they spoke about Sports Day being
I saw that
because OFSTED was in. Would you do that?
Do you know, it made me think when I saw that. Yeah, I think it was at Sports Billy 7. I found them.
Sports Billy 7, that's the one, yeah.
Would I cancel Sports Day? Day 2 of the inspection, no.
Yeah.
Because in a primary school, day 2, often there's a lot of like data evidence in the morning, and if my sports day was in the afternoon, I think that'd be fine, or vice versa. Or if it's like part of the school doing sports day, so there's still plenty to see. And in fact, I think that's my conclusion. So the way I do sports day in my 1.5 form entry is that early years and key stage 1 do one day, and then key stage 2 do a different day. So actually, even if they came, it's only half a day for part of the school, so there would still be plenty of time for them to see other classes, other things, other times. I think it's a great example of our community coming together in terms of parents coming to show support and what that looks like and how we live out our values. So I'm going to say, and hey, you never know, next summer this might happen. I put my neck out the line, but no, I wouldn't cancel Sports Day. Right. However, I think my caveat is, if my sports day was my whole school out there, and therefore all the OFSTED inspectors would just be doing that, I think I would be tempted, if I'm really honest. But if I can do it so that there's still enough people to meet and talk and do the things they need to see to gain the evidence without negatively impacting staff well-being, I don't think I'd cancel it. Unless there was a heat wave, and then that would be my excuse for cancelling it. Nothing to do with OFSTED were there.
Have you been through it before?
Yeah. So I've been through it as a head teacher at my last school. Been through it as assistant head twice in 2 different schools. But yeah, it was. I can't tell you how different it was doing it as a head teacher. In terms of that is on you, and you have to step up and take control of that and be part of that narrative. And like, I'm quite lucky. So it was just over 5 and a bit years ago, and we were in a very small school, and we had 2 inspectors who just got it right. They got small schools. They got. So I was in a really small school at that time. They got our context. They got where we're at. They worked really well with us. One of them was a head teacher who was exec head over schools that included small schools. So she really worked alongside us, and they were a fair team. So but it's the luck of the draw bit that gets you, isn't it?
Reason why I ask is, would you so you get the call right lunchtime, and sports day is all set to go. Head of PE is going for it, right? And would you mention it to them? Do you know what I mean? Is that something you'd say, like, well, we've got sports day in the next couple of days?
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
I would have that conversation with them that said, look, I need to let you know we've got, it's a bit like it's a school play, right? So in primary schools, that's kind of the same equivalent, same for nativities, all the rest of it. I'd definitely mention in that phone call to the inspectors when you're talking about that timetable, I need to let you know we've got this. And then I'd say my pitch. I'm happy for it to go ahead if you're happy to see X, Y, and Z, or have that conversation with them and agree it alongside the inspector what the right thing to do is. But ultimately, it's always about the head taking that control over that conversation and leading that whichever way they want.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like I guess then if they go, no, you're gonna have to cancel, like, which I don't know,
I don't think they would. I don't think they would make that call. I think they'd say you should carry on as normal. But yeah. Before we get any further, shall I do a first ad read? And then I feel like we might easily get into this and get distracted. So first one is the TTR newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to the weekly newsletter, it's called Sound Bites and Insights, delivered to 10,000 educators a week. 4 standout Teacher Talk radio shows from the week. It's got exclusive discounts and offers from sponsors. To sign up to the newsletter, it's ttradio.org/newsletter. The show is also brought to you by John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books, resources, loads of great ideas for how to improve teaching and learning from schools in the UK and around the world. So 20% off with the code JCTTR2425 at johncatt.bookshop.com. And last but not least, the Chalk and Talk podcast. If you're looking for another great educational podcast, check out Chalk and Talk with Anna Stoke. She's an advocate for evidence-based maths education, students of all ages, talks about effective teaching methods, how-to guides, and some evaluating research shows. She's got great guests, educators, researchers, discussing things that are relevant to teachers and students. So if you're interested in maths education, that's a great one to go to from wherever you get your podcasts.
Super. Okay, so I guess there's a whole host of things that schools do. So I think a great way to kind of think about this is maybe like to go through them, right? So like I've just got some stuff down. Like,
go for it.
Schools do loads of stuff, right? And look, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not one of these people who are like, abolish OFSTED, just let us get on with it. Because like having recently become a parent, it gives me a great deal of comfort that my local school has been inspected for safeguarding checks and has all the stuff in place to keep my children safe, etc. And I'm not sure there's an easier way of doing that than an inspectorate. I really don't think there's a way of doing that. So I'm totally on board with that. Do you know what I mean? And then the additional stuff is interesting as well. Like I think, to be honest with you, I would like a school to be held to a high standard. It's super important what we do.
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. I'm with you on the we've got to be held to a high standard. I think what it ultimately comes to is Ofsted there to help schools improve, or is Ofsted there to provide a judgment, right?
Yeah.
Because they're 2 very different things.
Yes.
So
yes.
If Ofsted are there just to judge, right?
Yeah.
They're going to give you this framework. They've got tick list mentality. Then you work your way through the framework. You end up with a judgment that whether it's because that ultimately goes, is it for parents or is it for the school leader itself? Because parents are less interested in what's the school going to do next, probably in some ways, and interested in what's the quality of education like now. And I think that's the issue, is that maybe we're trying to create a system that does both? And is that really possible?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, I think in schools we've got the mentality that we're developing, and like all the bodies that work with schools, like MATs and stuff like that, generally, I lie, like they're developmental. Like it's not in vogue anymore to be judgmental, is it? And ever since they got rid of those single teacher judgments, we've kind of moved beyond that. Do you know when
have we?
Well, no.
That's interesting. You
Yeah.
still see it all over X.
Yeah.
You see it on banners. You see it on
Yes.
websites. This school is
Yeah.
good with outstanding features or outstanding across the board. I don't know that we've moved away. I don't know that we've moved from 1 to 5 maybe, and maybe in September we'll move from 1 to 10. But
Yeah.
I don't think we've moved away from that mentality.
I'm not talking about this reform. I'm talking about when they got rid of judging individual teachers.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
got you. Yeah. Remember
so
that.
that was hard because everyone was judged at every key point in the school. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you were labelled a good or outstanding teacher or unsatisfactory teacher. Oh my God, can you imagine that now?
It was nice when you got outstanding, wasn't it?
Wow, yeah. but I mean, it was so subjective, and then like obviously because everyone was being judged on that process, there was no real look to development. It was more like, and they used to say, oh, here's how you go from good to outstanding, etc. But really it was a compliance thing, wasn't it? It was more like you say.
No, you're right.
Like, oh yeah, he's done AFL today, and he's done he's juggled fire in his classroom, so the engagement's there and things like that. Do you know, like you were just doing things for a bit of a tick box. It was really interesting. I did some I looked back at some Teachers TV videos. Do you remember Teachers TV?
Yes.
And it was mad, so I was trying to find some videos of practice because like we've not really got a chance to do it. I was trying to do some training with some colleagues, and I was looking back at the Teachers TV videos, and like it was good to outstanding, and they were like, and they were showing how like they had a whole lesson of someone trying to go for outstanding, had the inspector in the room and stuff like that. It was really interesting to watch that person because they were clearly more thinking about the boxes that they had to check throughout that process than actually teaching the kids. Like they didn't really, there was no real knowledge kind of given over. They didn't really check the knowledge or anything like that. They were just kind of like going, right, I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. I'm going to tease it out of you because that's what Ofsted want to see, etc. And that's quite an interesting perspective. But I think since those like individual teacher judgments have gone, I think we've moved forward within schools towards a more developmental framework. Some schools are more developmental than others, but I just noticed, people weren't coming in check boxing, and ever since sort of the takeoff of things like instructional coaching and those models, and also like since the like coaching has come into schools and Banbrick Santoyo and TLAC and stuff like that. I think like there's a massive shift, a paradigm shift in some schools. I'm not saying all schools. Some schools still do that whole tick boxy type thing and do things out of compliance. And so that's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think the inspectorate really is just there to judge. I'm not gonna lie to you. When it comes to the inspectorate, they are there just to judge. I mean, Martin Oliver's comments about house prices going up and down, and it will do crazy things the other day at EdFest was really interesting. It was really telling of how Ofsted see themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they don't give a single word judgment, it's going to mess up house prices. The parents aren't going to understand.
I mean, I have to say, it really winds me up, though. I know this isn't going into should we do things for Ofsted necessarily, but the fact that the voice of parents in the Big Listen feels like it has been so much stronger than the voice of professionals. Like the reports that were coming out kind of recently, or certainly at the start of the last framework, were so short and brief, and the rationale was always, but we need parents to be able to understand them. So you'd sit in these feedback sessions, and the feedback would be really positive and helpful and constructive, and you'd feel like, yes, these people have really got our school, they've really got a measure of us. And then you'd read the report and it would feel so impersonal, and things that had been really celebrated weren't included, and random things made it in that you kind of go, yes, it's nice that a child climbed a tree, but really, is that the most important feature of our school that needs to be commented? I don't know. I think we need a system which, if we're going to do things for Ofsted, is about improvements and making the right improvements.
Yes, I do. I think development, it should inform the development of your school. But it also, I think it should be a safeguarding of certain standards. Do you know what I mean? I think yeah, like safeguarding, like that should be
so this is an interesting one, right? Because one of the things that quite a few of the other heads brought up that I don't know if I'd really considered before is someone external who's coming in to judge every aspect of the school once every 5-ish years the right way to ensure that safeguarding is effective in your school? Like, or actually, should safeguarding be annual, done by your local authority or by some kind of other body that actually takes it out of that inspection process and makes sure that schools are safe? Because let's be honest, if they say things aren't safe, how many years have they not been safe for? Because no one is intentionally running a school in a way that isn't safe.
Yes.
If there are ways of working or policies or things that are happening that mean things are being missed, surely we need to be picking up on that sooner. Surely children deserve a higher quality of safeguarding from our staff than that. So it was a really interesting debate that we had about whether safeguarding should be within that judgment section or actually needs to be an advice and support and getting things right, but more regularly, without a kind of grading on it, to go, right, well, if you're like almost a pass fail, but if you're failing, here's what you need to do to get it right now, because we can't afford for this to be failing for another year. And I get that in the new framework they are going to re-inspect for safeguarding more recently, but I think it's an interesting debate about, does that need to sit under the Ofsted remit, or actually is there a different way that might be better to keep children safe?
I mean, well, I think maybe like waiting every 4 years, but maybe they've got the processes in place to check it. But maybe it just needs to be a more of a liaise with that. And do you know what I mean? With that body, like they can't wait for like you say, waiting for 4 years to figure out that there's a serious safeguarding issue.
You know, maybe there's something that triggers when a new head teacher joins or new DSL, like genuinely, because actually if someone's stepping into that role for the first time, I remember doing it. You know, I hadn't been a DSL as an assistant head because we'd got a safeguarding team because I was part of a bigger school. So there was the head and then a safeguarding team, right? Including social workers and things as part of that. So I remember stepping into this head role and doing my DSL training and going, wow, this is all on me. And at that time, the school I was at, I'd gone from a school that was, like I say, was big. We used an online safeguarding system. So I was fully, knew how to report and what happened in terms of that side of it. Going to a small school that was still on paper systems and had no real way of tracking and checking. And I was going, oh my goodness, this is all on me. And there will never be an intent to get something wrong, but it felt like risky. And actually, I think I would have valued a little more of a regular, like someone coming in. And so the argument for that will be, well, that's what governors are there for. But let's be honest, volunteers coming in and kind of sitting with a head and having that ability to hold them to account. If you've got a great governor who's doing that, brilliant. But we know that that's an issue across our schools.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So it should be an ongoing process. I think they know what. It's a different one.
Sorry, I've thrown that at you left field, haven't I?
You have. Sorry, I've just seen this as well.
Over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So Donna Josephine Barn has pitched in, I think we've just caught it now, saying about the so she says, my school didn't. The head teacher told everyone to go home after school, no staying home behind faff with displays. Then Ofsted came, he told us to open our doors and welcome them in. Seemed to work. So it must be in response to like, are we going to have to do stuff for Ofsted? So her head didn't. Look, let's pull it back to like, should we do things for Ofsted? So do you think then, like, instead of focusing on the safeguarding, we might actually, if we're just doing something for Ofsted, because you like we might actually end up, because it's every 4 years, like doing the paperwork for it rather than doing the safeguarding?
Well, I think, do we end up doing paperwork for Ofsted? Yes, because ultimately, as someone who's going to take lead of an Ofsted inspection, you want to be really confident that when an inspector walks in there, you've got on your hands all the evidence that you need to show that you meet the criteria they're looking at. So there is inevitably going to be an element of whatever framework they throw at you, you're going to go through it, rag rate it, decide where you are, get your source of evidence so you can talk confidently about it. Whether that's preparing subject leaders to be able to talk about things like a deep dive as was, whether that's making sure that all your monitoring systems show impact, because we've made our way through the eyes and we're now very firmly in that impact side of Ofsted. I think that one of the interesting things that comes from it is how much school improvement takes place when you're sat in that window, because you should be able to carry on doing all those things. The risk that I felt, and certainly in my last inspection window, is if you're a good school and you're in a good place and everything is working, the moment you try and change something and go, oh, but maybe this new scheme would be better, or maybe this new approach would be better. Say that you're in the window and they come 3 weeks later. It's clearly not going to be fully embedded.
Yes.
It's clearly not going to show the impact. You might be able to show your intent, your implementation plan, but if you're only partway through that, you know from the moment they walk in the door, one of your targets is going to be to make sure that's fully implemented and that you can show impact through doing that.
Yes.
If there is a risk when you start to work on something new, an area of school development, when you're in that window, that they come at the wrong time, they talk to the wrong child, wrong staff, whatever it is, if it is not fully there and you've not got the evidence in front of you, that you get pulled apart for it. And that makes me so sad, because I feel like as I enter the window, my real opportunity to do high quality, school development and move things forward kind of has to hit pause. What a ridiculous system.
So for that period of time, you're holding the rudder really, really steady, right? You're not making any course adjustments just in case they come in and like the ship's still turning. Is that what you're telling me? And,
yeah, I think so.
And they go, hold on, this ship isn't turning in the right direction, or like, or they could say that. Do you know what I mean?
Or where we can't tell, we don't have enough evidence of where you're going to do to make sure you're definitely going to get to where you're saying you're going to get.
Yeah, you're pointing that direction, but I don't know that you're going to that direction.
Yes. How can you prove to me that you're going to get to that end destination?
Yeah, and that window could be,
look what we've done.
That window could be a whole year of no school improvement. I mean, but this goes back to our last conversation about implementation-itis, right? So potentially, it's not a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? If I teach a whole steady for a year and everyone just locks in and like just nails what they're doing, it might be a good thing, right? Like,
yeah, if it was for a year max, and maybe that comes down to it, right? So one of the things we talked about in this meeting was there were a few of us that go for church schools, and there was a whole separate inspection for church schools called SIAMs, and when you're in the SIAMS year. So I already know from beginning of the summer term that next year I will most definitely be SIAMS inspected, because a list of the schools that will be inspected at some point in the year has come out. So if you were kind of potentially at the end of the year and you weren't really sure, you now know yes or no. So if you knew that next year categorically will be inspected, then you could hit pause for a year. And I get it. I'm with you. Fair enough. Like, just get everything right for that year. You've got loads of time afterwards to keep doing things you want to do. But the thing about Ofsted is that I jump into that window middle of next year. The inspections framework is going to change some point in September. So they're going to pause for a bit to retrain all their inspectors. So that probably puts it back to the summer term. Now, if something else happens and we don't know what's going to happen, that might put it into the following year. It could be even longer than a year. And that sitting, waiting bit really frustrates me.
Yeah. I mean, there's loads of things you end up doing though. Like, so for example, like schools end up doing OFSTED, extra data trawls, document trawls, policy writing. Some people actually write policy, a deep dive prep, training consultations. Like, is it worth it? Like, what is interesting, and you said this kind of earlier, like a school which has kind of got it together and it's been stable for a while versus a school that hasn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think those two conversations are very different. Should we do, and I've kind of entertained this idea, should we do something for Ofsted, is a very different conversation in both of those schools. Now, like, look, let's say they come in, the inspection team see something, and you're kind of like, you haven't done the due diligence behind it, you haven't jumped through the hoop, etc. And like, God forbid, you end up in a category. Well, then at that point, you might be a great leadership with a like superb vision in mind. But at that point, that vision's going to end up out the window. And you know, if you just let it become realized, give it a bit longer and let it become realized, then it could shift the school in a really good direction. I guess this comes back to the what you're saying, right? But if you don't do that thing for Ofsted, you could end up with like a rise team in, sorry, or like a mat team in who just come and steamroller over the vision and the idea, and you end up literally doing more for Ofsted after they've left because you need to get through that category inspection, and it involves ripping the vision apart, right? Do you know what I mean? And these people who consult, I don't know, like these rise things are quite new, but I don't know what they're working off and what vision they're working off. Do you know what I mean? But like, God forbid you get someone who's like, no, there's not enough. You're not doing enough assessment for learning, and then all of a sudden, like, we end up churning out more data, etc., and detracts from the teaching and learning within the classroom. Or maybe they don't think direct instruction's the way to go, and all of a sudden they think you need to go more inquiry based, and the kids need to be more engaged. Do you know what I mean? You just happen to get that guy.
Is absolutely one of the biggest issues with Ofsted. Is that it is so subjective on who and the inspection team you get. Because you get someone who understands the school, who's with you, and you can have some really high quality discussions and conversations. And you end up with a fair report that reflects the school that they've seen. The danger is you don't get that, and you get someone who comes in with maybe a more closed mindset approach, and then you're in trouble.
So if you knew what you were getting, would it be worth doing things for Ofsted?
If it's going to have impact. So for me, it all comes down to, for the sake of a judgment, no. But I say that as a good school, right? If I was in a school that requires improvement, for the sake of a judgment, I'd do anything I needed to, because I'd want to have that confidence in the community around me. Whether it's for improvement, so we had, because we've fallen into the Ofsted window, local authority school, we had what's called a good school review. So the local authority it wasn't a Ofsted, but it was very much someone external is going to come in, you're going to agree what your focus is going to be, they're going to spend 2 days working with you, looking, seeing, observing, seeing if there's anything that they need to be aware of. And some of the conversations and some of the things that I'm going to do as a result of that are not massive, turn everything upside down, throw the baby out of the bathwater. They're little tweaks that I can see are going to make our school more effective. Right? So am I doing it for Ofsted or am I doing it to improve the school? Well, the answer is both. Because she came in because we fall in the Ofsted window, and it's going to make my job of talking to an inspector much easier. But actually, will it make me a more effective school leader and improve our school improvement? I think it will. So in that example, I'll do it because I can see the positives. Had she come back to me and said, right, I need your staff to be triple marking everything because we can't see how the children are responding to feedback when they can't read and write, I would have turned around and said, I understand that that's your opinion. That's not a line we're going to go down.
Yes.
You know, and I mean, in primary, there's this concept of things called floor books. So you'll just have to excuse me, Beejesh, for this one. So effectively, rather than sticking a photo of what every child, like you take a photo of the children doing group activity outside, right? They've all made a den. They've all, you know, done some great forestry stuff. Rather than printing it 30 times and sticking it in every child's book with exactly the same photo and exactly the same commentary, you might have one book that has a record of all those kind of things that children can talk through, they can look at, but you don't need to print it 30 times for the sake of it being evidence in their book.
Yeah.
Now, some people like that, some people hate that, right? It's swings and roundabouts. Am I going to do it just because she said you might want to think about doing that because it would save your teachers time? Yes.
Yeah.
But am I going to make that decision straight away? No. I'm going to have a conversation with my staff and we're going to decide together what's the right call for our school, and that's what we're going to do. Even if it means going against her recommendation, because actually, if as a team that's what we think we should do, then that's what we're going to do.
And if you're in RI school, then
if I'm in an RI school and my data's looking poor, and I need my teachers to focus more on that than sticking pictures in 30 times, I probably am just going to tell them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so that's the key in it. I think there's a several. You're on a scale really of where you're at as a school, but
and the pressures are different. Okay,
yeah,
the pressures of working in an RI or a inadequate school are so different because you have to play the game. Because the way to get out of that pressured environment, the way to get out of that kind of tipping point, is to get yourself back to a place where actually you're not having that constant scrutiny. You're not going to have, well, in the new framework that's proposed, someone coming every 18 months, I think. If any of your inspection areas are amber, you would have an inspection every 18 months. And that feels unmanageable, counterproductive, and let's be honest, isn't going to help anyone's staff well-being. You're going to be hemorrhaging staff, surely.
Brutal, isn't it, that? And that's even so. Yeah, it's interesting because you might just have to abandon. It's quite because you've got two choices, haven't you? Right? You got the idea of this school that does this, that, and the other, and how it looks, and blah 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 as a leadership team, because every leadership team does or should. Then you get RI because you're just taking on the school. Maybe something like behaviour is a little bit wonky, or safeguarding is a little bit odd, or do you know what I mean? You end up getting a team in who then look at everything. I don't know what these teams look like. I don't know what they do. I've not found a lot of information about what they do and how they do it. I've not heard.
Ofsted inspectors?
No, the RISE teams that they send.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've not heard much about them. That's quite an interesting thing to entertain. If any listeners know about it, then let us know. But then you don't know whether they're looking for that specific thing that you need to work on, or whether they're just going to be a broad team who come in and kind of look. If you're in, if you requires improvement, are you going through all those? Are we going through everything, through all the cupboards and everything to see what's wrong? Do you know what I mean? At which point, what you had in mind might have to either be put on hold or thrown out the window completely. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
And inevitably, some of the decisions made for that process and some of the actions that you put in process, because once you put, schools are crazy, aren't they? Once you put something in place, like, and this sort of like an action goes out, like for example, floor books, it's really hard once that steamroller is in motion, or once the snowball's in motion, to rein it back in, isn't it? Like, so they suggest floor books, and then all of a sudden you put them in place, and then like maybe 3 years down the line you're not in an RI category anymore because everyone's got the data sorted and stuff, and then and then you just want to get rid of these floor books because they don't fit with how you thought it was going to go. You thought these kids were going to get individualized or blah blah blah. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you've got to roll that back and de-implement that strategy or something. Do you know what I mean? And suddenly, like, it's too hard because teachers are habitual, and it's going to take maybe another 2 years, etc. And it's going to be difficult because it's going to put you back in a category potentially, and then Ofsted coming back in the next point. Do you know what I mean? In the next window, and potentially you're first on the list now, so you're at the start of the window rather than the end of the window. So you can see how suddenly, like, what you thought your school was going to be can end up becoming very, very different due to the fact that you did things for Ofsted, and you had to do things for Ofsted. So I think that's the difficulty that leaders find themselves in, isn't it? And that's why quite often we'll just end up with a slavish commitment to, well, Ofsted want to see this, and so we're going to do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, and maybe sometimes people don't have loftier visions than what they have. Like, maybe I'm asking the question: does the fact that this framework exists stop the loftier visions? But then, if you look at schools who do have lofty visions, do you know, like those schools, for me in secondaries, it would be those schools with those progress aids at like 1.5 and 2, stuff like that, and they just do amazing things for pupil premium kids. When you look at them, they have those lofty visions, and they don't seem to have to do much for Ofsted. So there's a chicken and egg situation, isn't there?
Yeah, and so data's an interesting one, isn't it? Because data's definitely coming back to the forefront in this new inspection framework. And therefore, is there a conversation going on in secondary level about, and maybe it never went, the need to get your progress aid, the need to get your higher results than national and things. Do you think that went away?
It never went.
Looking at data,
it never went. If you're on a negative progress 8, and like you know you're going to have some questions to answer, because they look at the website before you come. They're looking at performance data before they come in, and even if they don't stipulate it in the report, well, they do. I've read loads of reports. They do. They go, the school was not in line with the English and maths wasn't in line with national average last year. Do you know what I mean? They say it, and it does. It's never really gone, to be honest with you. Like even if it appears so, I think maybe in primary it's a little less so. I don't know.
I think there was always some, but I definitely feel from primary the conversations that I was having with inspectors in the most recent inspection was far less data than ever previously. Like, it's in my SEF, and I had got there the kind of 3-year picture, so you could see trends and what you're doing, and how your school development plan then feeds into any lessons learned from it. So it was still part of my school improvement. It was still part of the things I was doing, but it was not part of my Ofsted experience really much at all.
I'll tell you what mad stuff we've stopped doing, like trying to show progress through data.
Well,
that's what we used to do. That's the sort of crazy stuff that we used to do for Ofsted that we don't do as much of anymore. But there's still this hangover. There is still a hangover. There are still people who go like, well, they got on the last assessment they got 60, and on this assessment they got 30. Is that showing progress? And you go, well, the two they're not standardized, and like you can't look at the assessments, and one's harder than the other, and like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying they've gone backwards, but like I don't know, without the standardization of the hardness, etc., or without any like hallmarks to compare it to, I couldn't tell you. Do you know what I mean? We do less of that, but we used
a mentality that children cannot go backwards, right? When data was king, and now I genuinely have conversations in pupil progress meetings that go, well, since this child's been through this horrendously traumatic experience and their attendance has been quite wobbly, and actually their emotional well-being has been off the charts, yes, it is quite possible that they have not achieved as well at this point in time than they did previously. But genuinely, that wouldn't have really been the conversation that I could have had last time. And how insane is that?
Yeah, it's insane. Like, so like flight pathing was a huge... Oh my God, it was huge when like, and you'd have to have your data in line with the flight path. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then the conversations will come. This is something we used to do for Ofsted. So where if they come in, you're going to have to explain why your class isn't on the flight path. You know, they should have. They've got this target in year 7, this target in year 8. They're all separate targets, by the way. and people produce. I've seen growth charts. Claire, is bonkers, right? And then essentially, well, I mean, the government guidance around flight paths is that they're rubbish. They don't really work. Do you know what I mean? It says that schools should not flight path, but still, people still do it. Just like legacy Ofsted stuff. People, old school leaders, still look at data with flight paths in their mind. It's mad. Like, it's, like the assessment theory hasn't really come to like all leadership teams in the country, and they still look at data with, even if they're not talking about flight paths, they've still got that in mind. Do you know what I mean? Oh, well, the target is this, and therefore in year 8 they should be at here, and then they should be there, and you can't really explain. Well, number one, the assessment, the inferences you make from the assessments aren't valid enough to say that. Because you didn't design the assessment with that purpose in mind, and it's not like norm referenced or standardized, and like, do you know what I mean? Like, you don't know how hard the assessment was comparatively. And number two, like, kids might not do that. Like,
not linear.
Whereas there is still hangover from the days of Ofsted where, like, oh, how many children have moved from level 3A to 3B? Do you remember those, the national curriculum level?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if APP ever made it to secondary. Was that a concept?
Big time.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, talk about the biggest, most least impactful thing in terms of the amount of time that it took. But, I mean, that was all for Ofsted, because you needed to show specific objective progress with dates and, for individual children to be able to talk about these things as well as the bigger picture. I mean, that was hours upon hours of time.
And do you know what you do? You just fudge it, because you could. You just fudge it, and you could fudge it because the system was like that. And let's face it, when you fudge an assessment like that, or you don't pay attention to what the kids do and do not know, you just fudge it for the data. Do you know what I mean? And flight pathing does that as well. You just fudge it for the data. So when you do something for Ofsted like that with assessment data, so I'm glad they don't do data trawls anymore. I think I did like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I did like Amanda Spielman's dubs. Sorry, I uttered those words like carefully, but I don't agree with everything. But I did like the focus on curriculum and the idea that, because it drove this wonderful idea of rigor in schools and kids actually learning stuff properly. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and I think it will have a legacy. So here's the thing I think about what should we do for Ofsted? Things that we do because they're the right things and means you can have meaningful conversations with Ofsted, great. The focus on curriculum and getting assessment of curriculum that's actually meaningful, of getting the knowledge-rich curriculum right, that will stay, because no one's going to walk away and go, yeah, I'm not going to worry about curriculum anymore, because for so many years we've been focusing on what is the best curriculum that we can offer our children. And that's the right thing to do. I don't need anyone to be talking to me about cultural capital and making a big deal of it. That legacy has remained. I still want to make sure that children at my school have a whole range of different opportunities and experiences, regardless of their circumstances. So although I might not use those same words, I might call them, enhancement experiences, rather than cultural capital. That is a legacy that has remained, because actually I believe in the value of it. I believe that having the right high quality curriculum is the right thing to do. So even though these things come in cycles and waves, I won't let go of that, because I'll continue to drive it. And actually, I think the rise in expectation of subject leadership, even at primary when you're really stretched, to be able to know as a subject leader what that looks like beyond your classroom. So say you're a year 5-6 teacher, to know what is going on in reception year 1 in your subject. That didn't really happen before, if I'm honest. There might be a bit of paper they could go and find, but it was basically go and talk to the year 1 teacher if you want to know about year 1 art. But now, as an art lead, they are the ones who have to be able to say, here's what I know about art, all the way from foundation up to year 6. I think that's a good thing.
It's brought out a proper bit of nerdery, hasn't it, that Ofsted conversation? Like, if you're doing that for Ofsted, literally, if you're thinking about your sequencing, because Ofsted are coming in, but you obviously you're not going to change it. But if you've really thought about your sequencing, and then Ofsted come in and do a deep dive and asking you about sequencing, well, you're going to have a you're going to have a proper nerdy conversation. And I love my subject, right? And if you love your subject, then that conversation isn't actually going to be, it's not going to be challenging. It might actually, dare I say it, be enjoyable. Do you know what I mean? Because you get to go.
I
right,
think that's the secret thing about school leaders is that a lot of us secretly don't mind the rising to the challenge. Like, is it going to be stressful? Oh yes. Is it going to, have a burden and be difficult, and we're going to have to get ahead of our new framework? But do you know what? If you give us the time and tell us it's going to be meaningful dialogue that comes from it, that's okay. I'm happy to be rigorously challenged. I'm happy to have those conversations, because if, like you say, you love your subject, if I love my school and everything in it, and I really strongly believe in the vision that I've got for my school in terms of where I want it to get to, where we're going, why we're going there, and how we're going there, that's a good, positive, enjoyable conversation for me to have, about what I love and what is the strengths of my school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like the idea. See, I love this idea that you just run a school where you don't have to worry about OFSTED. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you're so committed and clear
when you're in a good school, and I just need to caveat it with that.
That's the problem. If you've inherited something which is not where you want it to be, and you're early out in your vision, and you get hit by OFSTED, it's not a fair position. I think I'll just say it.
And the problem is, it can be career defining, right? So if it goes wrong, if I'm honest, as a local authority head teacher, it is my head on the line. That is potentially career ending if it goes badly. Because if you lose the community around you and you lose that trust of your staff or anyone, your governors, whoever it is, like, that can be really damaging. So why is there the temptation to do things for Ofsted? Because these are high stakes, high pressured situations that you're putting school leaders into.
Let's think about the all-nighter before the night before. Yes or no?
So interesting. Around this table, there were people that did that, and there were people who remember when in the Ofsted window, heads used to say to staff, "Make sure you've got an overnight bag packed if you're living far away." I've never done an all-nighter, but I do remember the day the inspection phone call came, and I'd been doing some work at another school, thankfully not too far away, and I went back to my school, and I didn't come home till maybe 10 that evening. Another head teacher came and bought some pizza. I was in school by 5:30, 6 the following day. And I mean, it's so interesting. It was a small school, so it was actually a one-day inspection. So it was just one day of pure pain. But I could easily have imagined staying, to at least 8, 9 the following day and being back in early. But the thing is, school leaders aren't very good at sleeping anyway. But sleeping when you know the stuff you need to do or want to do, or just think, oh, if I just did. But again, that's where being in a slightly bigger school with a bigger SLT team means you share that burden out, and you all pull your weight on those things.
What about your team?
Yeah, in a very small school, there isn't much of that. Your deputy is teaching full time, and you go, right, this is me then. But it is absolutely, and like, I didn't see my family at that time, at all. It was literally you tell your partner if you've got one, and that's obviously tricky if you haven't. That these kids are not going to see you for probably 24 hours in reality. Good luck. I'll see you the other side. And
what I meant was what about your team staying?
That's a mixed one, isn't it? Would I say to them they need to stay? Absolutely not. Would I be annoyed if they left at 4:00 and didn't turn up till 7:30, 8, or more like 8:30, whatever, the following day? Probably, because the chance of them being fully prepared to do their best is impacted. But I wouldn't want them staying as late as I would, probably, as much as you should, walk the walk and talk the talk.
Interesting one. Stick your game faces on. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if you're in that position, stick your game faces on. We're going to do our school proud tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And do what you need to do. Versus break your back. We need to make this place look good. I guess that's the messaging, isn't it? That's the two. That's two messages. That maybe there's more, but
over 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads, no distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. I think that kind of the message is right. We knew this was coming. We know we're in a good place. You know what? And it's not go away and mark books. So pre this good school review, I had a teacher who's quite new to our school genuinely come to me and went, I know they're going to want to look at books. Do you want me to sit and like triple mark all these books or find some really good, really high marked examples and the rest of it? And I just turned around and went, no, I don't want you to do any of that. If they come and look at our marking and say that's something we need to look at, fine. Like we can have that conversation, but please do not spend, this was Friday night or whatever, spend any time stressing about that now. Because if what we're doing is following our marking policy, different question if they're not, but if what we're doing is sticking to a policy that we've said, all they're looking for is that being thorough and in action.
Yes.
And if we're not doing that, I should already know that, because otherwise I'm not doing my monitoring job good enough, well enough to know that it's happening or not happening.
Yeah. Going to do a quick news read. A quick ad read. So TTR newsletter. Have you subscribed to our weekly newsletter yet? It's called Soundbites and Insights, and it's delivered to 10,000 educators a week. It contains a curated selection of 4 standout TTR shows from the week, exclusive discounts and exclusive offers from our sponsors. Sign up on our website at ttrradio.org/newsletter. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like, you're marking, like you say, you should. That's the interesting thing as well, isn't it? Sometimes, isn't it? Like maybe you're doing things for OFSTED because you haven't done what you needed to do initially. Do you know what I mean? On your day to day. I'm quite well. I said it kind of in the last time we talked about kind of this lazy leadership, which just gathers the paperwork forward, and then you spend more time gathering the paperwork and trying to evidence it through paperwork. You know, like collecting in the books, having a look through, rather than getting out and looking at what people are doing, etc. And then eventually, it is a problem when OFSTED come in because you've just been kind of trying to look at all the classrooms from your office.
Yeah. And I think there's that balance between, are your policies written with Ofsted in mind? Because ultimately that's what you're going to be held to account on, perhaps. That actually we want to make sure that the policies state what your school is saying it's going to do. And I think it's absolutely right that Ofsted should be able to look at that and hold you to account for it. Now, ultimately, though, school leaders and SLT or subject leaders need to know and be in agreement for what that states in it. And it needs to state what the right thing for your school is. And that will look different for schools in different contexts and different places. Yeah. And I think what's important is that Ofsted don't judge whether what's in that policy is what they would do or they agree with. What matters is that policy effective?
Yes.
And is it what people are actually doing? Because it's a bit like when someone talks about maths as an example, and the policy says that children in a certain year group will have lots of opportunities to physically have manipulatives to help them with their understanding, to be able to verbalize it. And then you go in and you see no opportunity for any manipulatives, even on the side, or any evidence they've been used previously. And at that point you go, well, you either believe those things are effective and helpful, which is what your policy states, and let's be honest, research states, but fine. Yeah. In which case, why aren't we seeing that? And if people come back and say, oh, do you know what, we're doing shape right now, so it doesn't really feel like the right time to have our tens frames or whatever it is that's our number manipulatives out, then fine, but you can justify and talk around that and give evidence when it's done previously. But if there's just almost a disregard for it, then it becomes a much harder conversation to have with anyone. But we need to, as school leaders, make sure we're picking up on that earlier, not because of Ofsted, but because that's what you say as a school is your policy and process and way of working.
See, that's the thing. So let's say, God forbid, you end up in a school, early leadership team in the school it's not going well, and you end up inheriting potentially, like you say, if you're going to make the right policy which is effective and people follow it, and you put that vision in place, and Ofsted still come in and judge your school as requires improvement, and then you get you need the right team then to help you make that happen, don't you?
Yeah,
I think that's the core behind it. If you're not just going to do things for Ofsted, because there's two doing things for Ofsted: there's pre-inspection and post-inspection. And post-inspection, it seems like these RISE teams need to be the right team for your school. So, for example, if your school's going hell for leather on discovery learning, then you need a team which will help you make that vision happen, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that's the right vision.
Well, that doesn't surprise me from our previous conversations, if I'm honest. It was an interesting example to have gone for.
Well, do you know what I mean? I wanted to go beyond, but let's say then you need a team to help you make that vision happen and make it effective for the pupils, right? What you don't need is the direct instruction team, which then basically forces you to do something to get out of requires improvement. And then essentially you're left with this hugely clunky process that you or your leadership team aren't invested in, and you just have to be the kind of custodian of that for the rest of your tenure there. Do you know what I mean? That sounds horrific, and I think that's what puts the misery up the leaders around when it comes to doing things for Ofsted.
Yeah, and I think the fact that RISE teams seem to be the only way to move schools towards academisation now, right? Like, if the improvements aren't seen, then they're certainly going to be directing, if it's a local authority school, to a multi-academy trust, or another high-performing school, or an organisation with specific experience where help is needed. We kind of all know what that means right now. And that actually, that's when the funding is going to become available, that actually schools get that support. And that was always, once upon a time, the way it was. If you were in a place where Ofsted hadn't gone well, there did used to be a high level of funding available to support you. And that is a positive move, because ultimately, whether that's to be able to recruit higher skilled teachers, because sometimes the problem is that actually you need those experienced teachers to be able to support things. Some of the RISE teams are looking at schools being more inclusive, and that's a fascinating one. Doing things for Ofsted, we're going to run out of time, aren't we? But maybe this is something to come back to. That there's this real push for schools to be more inclusive, and yet without the financial support, with the rise of data being the kind of king and pressure of it, we're kind of not really supporting schools to actually be inclusive. But that's a whole nother conversation, perhaps.
The cash flow, yes. Money talks, right? It's an interesting one. That's the other thing you might do. If you end up, you're going to end up with a lot more funding, and essentially then you're going to have to justify how to spend that, and then you're going to have to do things for Ofsted. But it might be for the right reasons. I think what we're coming to is, if you're going to do things for Ofsted, it needs to be for the right reasons, doesn't it? For your school and for your development. Like, if your team, if you're telling the team to stay till 9 o'clock tonight, well, maybe that just makes everyone feel better. At which point it's the right decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if
and that comes down to good, strong leadership, right?
Yeah, like you need to know your team. Like, building's open till 9. In some places that is the war cry of, if you don't stay until 9, I will be judging you. Do you know what I mean? In other places, it's like, look, I appreciate your panic and etc. We're here for you till 9. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what the leadership team is saying. And so at that point, doing something for Ofsted, it seems loads of people like to say it like a negative thing. Oh, well, these schools are open till not 12 o'clock when, some of them aren't asking you to work. Some of them are just there because SLT are there. If you have an absolute freak out because of this huge stressful thing, Ofsted is Ofsted. Is going to, do you know what I mean? Like, that conversation is a different one. Like, if you have a huge freak out, then at least you're in building and there's someone there for you to rather than freaking out at home. Some people who don't really understand what you're going through. Do you know what I mean? Like, absolutely. So it's an interesting one. Like, mock steads. Like, if you do a mock stead and you come out of it like super confident, well, fairs, isn't it? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. But if you go do a mock stead and all it does is make you more anxious and puts workload on, well, not good. Do you know what I mean? There's ways and means of doing that, and so I don't think they're always bad things. So I think once again, Claire, we've come to quite a nuanced perspective, which is like, look, there's doing things Ofsted good, and there's doing things for Ofsted not good, and there's a whole spectrum in between. And I guess we should be leaning towards the good end of the spectrum, where like you're a sensitive SLT who know what is right for the school, at which point you might do something for Ofsted which is right for the school.
Yeah, sounds like a great conclusion.
I don't know why I feel I need to wrap it up, but I do.
I always enjoy it.
It's like Beejesh Deva's final words.
Yes. We'll make a feature. We'll get a theme tune. I'm on it.
Yeah. So yeah, right. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you, listeners, and thank you for your input. Listen, if you hear this and listen to it on the podcast, then let us know, and obviously share it on Twitter, on X, and make sure you share your comments. Some of you have kind of said you were going to listen. You've listened in today. You haven't missed the opportunity to interact. You can always kind of send us a message on X, and don't forget to listen to all the other Teachers Talk radio shows. It's going all day. There's loads of stuff on at the moment, and tune in on. I should really pre-prepare this, shouldn't I, Claire? Well, I don't. I like to go rogue.
Well, it's August as well, isn't it?
August.
So
oh my
be,
goodness.
Second week in August.
Right. We might struggle with that.
Yeah, we might have to have a conversation about that. We'll confirm. Maybe back in September, hey?
Yeah, maybe. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Or we'll do a different day or a different week, I reckon. So yeah, we might have to look at that. I think I might be unavailable.
I'm the same, if I'm honest, on the 13th. So yeah, we'll have a chat.
Better times, eh? Forward to better times. Right.
Right. Good to chat again.
Good to see you, Claire. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.